Good evening, everyone. My name is Jeremy Heiler. I am a 8th grade English and science teacher at Fulton Schools in Middleton, Michigan. We are a small school that is literally in the middle of Michigan. Um, I am also the co-director for the Chippewa River Writing Project. I am a co-author of 2 books with Dr. Troy Hicks, Create, Compose, Connect, and also From Texting to Teaching, Grammar Instruction at a Digital Age, which you can see here on the screen. And tonight's video cast is from, not really from the book, but is dealing with grammar issues and, shamelessly plugging my book, obviously, but I'm here tonight also as the ATEG Vice President, which is the Assembly for Teachers of English Grammar. If you're interested in joining, you can go to ateg.weebly.com. That is ateg.weebly.com. I'm here tonight to kind of spin off from a podcast that I did. If you don't know anything about my podcast, you can find my podcast on Anchor. It is called Middle School Madness. I try to do a podcast every once in a while. Anchor has really been a great tool, and they continue to make it better. But I did a podcast, I believe it was last week or the week before, about this conversation I've been having with my middle school students about texting and just the language that they use in texting, and this idea of informal versus formal language that really is really at the heart, I feel, in my opinion, is at the heart of the grammar issue that we have with our students. And Dr. Hicks and I talk about that in our book too, with this idea of informal and formal, and students just knowing their environment in terms of when they need to use formal writing versus informal writing, or when they need to use those grammar skills. One of the things that I always hear when talking to other educators at conferences and doing book talks and things like that is that they feel like students just don't know grammar. And I have felt their struggle. I have felt like that is the case until this year, when I had a conversation with my middle school students, and my middle school students were like, "No, Mr. Heiler, we do know English. We do know grammar, and we are just choosing when to use it and when not to use it." And I'm like, "Well, why do we not use it when we're supposed to in our writing?" And they're like, "Because it's boring. We just don't want to use it." And sometimes we are still blurring those lines between formal and informal. I thought that was interesting. So I'm like, talk to me more about how you do know how to use this, because I need to know that you really do know how to use this. And so students were talking to me about this idea of when they are texting, that when they are really upset at the other individual that they're texting, that they actually do use proper grammar, which I thought was really interesting. That then the other person knows that they're serious, that this is a serious text message. I'm using proper grammar, and you know that I'm serious, or you know that there is more emotion in this, or I know that I am upset. And I also thought that it was interesting that my students really focused on the your, in terms of Y-O-U-R or Y-O-U apostrophe R-E for you are. They said that drives them nuts when people don't use that correctly. And I thought, wow, I'm like, my students are really really coming around as grammarians, because they are starting to understand this idea of when to use those, when to use your properly. And so in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, well, why can't they just use there, and there then when they're supposed to? But baby steps. We got to take baby steps with our middle schoolers. But then I was just talking to them about some other things, and I took some notes and with my students, and they talked about that. Capitalization really isn't an issue for them. They don't think about it because there is more ways to be dramatic. They said that exclamation points were used more for sarcasm than anything, or quotation marks were used for sarcasm, which I thought was really interesting. They also, the idea of using bigger vocabulary. They're like, "Mr. Heiler, we have some bigger vocabulary that we use, but we tend to use it when we really want to get our point across, or when they're really mad or upset," they said. So I thought that was really, really interesting. they said that they really are bothered by one word texting by people, or one letter texting. For example, the word okay, some people will respond back with K. I know that my own family members do that, and they said that that drives them nuts. Especially my students said that that drives them nuts, especially when they have a really long text that they send, and then the recipient responds with K. And I can understand their frustration there. So that was really interesting to hear them talk about that. And then they said where texting is done mostly is in Snapchat today, instead of just using, normal texting on phones. So, we're continuing to see our students shift in terms of the number one, the tools that they're using, and we're seeing this shift in terms of students and how they are using texting, and they do know some rules, and they do know the difference between things. So that's promising as a teacher. And I also, just to kind of leave you with one last thing, and this is something that you can definitely investigate in your own districts or your own schools, is that my students talked about the fact that that there is this culture that exists within their own school district, or within our own school district, in terms of who they text and what they're texting. They talked about how, that there is certain text talk, or that lingo that is being used through texting, that only the people in our district, or the students in our district, would understand, opposed to if they were to text some of those same things to other students in different districts. And I thought that was interesting, that they have kind of their own texting culture. So I thought that was something to really ponder and to reflect on and to consider. So maybe something for you as educators to investigate. So you get time, check out the book that Dr. Hicks and I wrote, From Texting to Teaching, Grammar Instruction in Digital Age. We know that grammar instruction is much different. Grammar is definitely not the highlight of anybody's day, but it is something that we definitely need to get our students to use correctly. So check our book out on Routledge, through Routledge, our publisher, or you can find it on Amazon as well, or other bookstores that are selling it. And hopefully, if you have any questions, that you can get a hold of us. And you can always go ahead and find me on Twitter at Jeremy B. Baller. I am always responding to my Twitter account, and I'm on a lot of different chats. So hope everyone has a good night, and think grammar, and think about how your students are using grammar today. Bye, everyone.